What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up, folks? Hey, 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 how you doing? Happy Friday. Happy whatever today is. Hello. Welcome to Unmasking with Male Educators. In a recent conversation that I had with Jerome Hunter, who's an educator, he's a school consultant, he's also a TED speaker. That episode you can find season 2, episode 2 of this show. Before you listen to that episode, I want you to reflect on 3 things. 3 takeaways that we had in this conversation, and hopefully these things will give you some tips as you in your school or in your classroom or in your community or in your coaching practices, whatever you're doing to work with youth, definitely as you work with your male students, this may give you some tips on how to improve those conversations. And so there's going to be 3 areas we're going to talk about, 3 different areas that I want to talk about. One is take a mindful minute with your students every day. Take a mindful minute, 60 seconds. You can do more, great, but how about 60 seconds of a mindful minute every day? 2, working on academic stamina, which needs to be trained. It can't just be expected for school, and it has to be measured in students as well. So academic stamina, number 2. And number 3, bring the community into the curriculum. Bring the community into the curriculum. Take out your notes, and let's start the show. As a male educator at your school site, it can get lonely. Only 23% of K-12 educators in America are male. And just think about what this gender gap means for your male students. They experience disproportionate levels of discipline. This is a show for male educators who want to feel more understood by their community and want to create emotionally safe classrooms and schools for the next generation of male students. Welcome to Unmasking with Male Educators. Now, I'm going to talk about a couple of these things because I think that as an educator, as a person who was in the classroom for 10 years, as an administrator for 3 years, my work revolved around a lot of these pieces, but it didn't start that way. In the beginning, I was just survival mode. How do I get kids to focus, pay attention, not running around in the room? How do I keep them engaged somewhat? And how do I make sure that I'm doing my best so that I don't lose it when I'm getting irritated or frustrated about the behavior that is absolutely not acceptable, maybe even in your classrooms. The part of our work is making sure we have a room that students can learn in, they feel excited in, and that we're protecting all students. Because one thing that one student may thrive in, a kind of behavior room, a type of ambiance, may make another student feel totally off guard. And so it's finding that balance for 30 plus students at a time. That's what we have to do as educators. So I'm gonna start with 1, taking a mindful minute. Now, I didn't start with that. When I first started teaching, students come in, let's go, get to work. Warmers on the board, get to work. You get in, get your pencil out. It's first period, we're jumping into the work, you know? And I think when I came back from India, when I came back from the Fulbright Fellowship, I really had taken in and learned about meditation and the power of taking just a moment. Now, I had done at that point a long retreat, like a 4 or 5 day in silence retreat. I had done the 7-10 day course that was a longer course. I had taken a class that was over the course of several weeks. So I had already had a lot of practice. Now, my students didn't have practice at having a mindful minute. So when I came back, I had this CD back when, think about the last CD you've played, but I had this CD from Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, who was from the Art of Living Foundation. And I put it on and I told my students what we're going to do every day, every Friday. I think it was going to be every Friday or maybe every Monday or Friday. I forgot how it worked. We're going to take a few minutes and we're just going to breathe. Now, what I realized and thinking my students are going to just totally fall in love with it because I had fallen in love with it is that, oh no, they were not ready. The song starts off with this, Indian music in the background, high pitched sitar. I don't want to try and imitate what the sound is. You can imagine what the music sounds like. And then his voice comes in. He's like, he has a very gentle, loving voice. And all of a sudden, as soon as he starts talking.
In today's meditation, we synchronize our hand movement.
Everyone starts laughing. Not everyone, but students in the class are laughing, right? They're like, who is this talking? And I'm like, that's Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. What are you talking about? And they're like, what? And then all of a sudden now I got to deal with their energy to focus on this voice, which is a very calming, gentle. My voice, I don't think is. People say it can be calming, but I don't. I wouldn't describe it that way because I think I'm always like feel like I'm in action mode. But what happened in those moments is like, no, listen, y'all got to sit here, sit. And I found that my students could not sit for 1 minute still with their eyes closed. I'm like, well, don't close your eyes. Just find a spot in the room to stare at that you, if you don't feel comfortable closing your eyes, no problem. Just don't be looking around. Just find one spot and just stare at it. We're going to do it for 1 minute. And literally that 1 minute was the longest 1 minute of my life. I'll never forget it. Now, I could have just given up. I said, you know what? That don't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because it definitely wasn't really working. But I was said, I know the power of it. I know the power of settling down, settling your mind. And we did it with every class. So it wasn't like only first period did it. It was like every class did it because every class was going to come in fresh. They came from wherever they came from. They came from lunch. They came from wherever. And it was like, how do we come in this room and get grounded? So after that first day, I was like, this is ridiculous. I could have been like, this is not going to work. But what I also know is that myself as a meditator, as a person who sat for hours and hours and quiet, it was not easy in the beginning. So I knew that coming back to Oakland from India, Tamil Nadu, by the way, Chennai, by the way, Padma Sheshadri, Balabhavan Senior Secondary School, by the way, all these layers of where I had come back from, to bring all these things I had learned over this 6-7 months and expect my students to get it in the first minute was not reasonable. So what I had to do is begin buying into them. I had to give them time to buy into it. So the next week, we did it again. Now, we weren't doing it every day back then because that first day went so horribly. I was just trying to see how can I work this in a lighter way. So we just began to slowly work it in every day. Work it in. You know, we're going to do 2 minutes. This week, we're going to do 2 minutes. Close your eyes. Don't close your eyes. Sit quiet. Don't move. Be still. Relax. Like giving them opportunities to continue practicing because it's a practice. It's not a thing that you get and then you finish and then you've perfected it. It is you do it and then you do it again. And if you talk to some people who meditate every single day, they tell you, you got to tell your body, we are not moving. You're not in charge. I'm in charge. I will tell you when we're going to move. And right now we're not going to move. I mean, I think you have to have those kind of conversations with yourself and with your body and with your soul to say the distractions are out there. The phone is vibrating over there. Something else is happening in the other room. Like you have to decide that it's a practice. But for your students, if you just start with 1 minute, some of them will want more. Like, let's go more. But maybe you just start with the 1 minute, and some of them will be uncomfortable with it, with a place where it's so quiet. They want to make a noise because they need the noise for the attention, or for they're not used to having the attention not on them, and so now they want to poke at someone. But those are practice. Those are things that you experience as a teacher all the time. Now I can tell you, after they got up to like 5 minutes, like it was like beauty. Sometimes they would even let me turn the lights off, like let it really just get into a deep reflective moment. Now, there will be times when I get back to class and I'm ready to run to get to work. We got work to do. You got projects to work on. And students be like, hey, we ain't going to meditate today. And I'm like, you're right. And I was really thankful that some students began to really expect it and appreciate it as being something that they wanted to have as a part of their week. And I think that what I'm hoping that some of them are still using that practice in their life. So number one, take a mindful minute with your students each day. The conversation is like, how do you give them a moment just to say, what would it be like if I had more control of my mind? What if I wasn't controlled by others? And most students don't like to think they're controlled by others, but they definitely oftentimes operate like that. And so when we get a chance to say to them, how about we're going to get better at being in control of our own minds, not being played like puppets. Every time somebody does something, we have to react to it. And I think that takes us into number 2, which is academic stamina, which needs to be trained and measured in schools. Your academic stamina is your ability to say, okay, I'm working on this math problem. I think some people would call it grit, right? How long am I willing to struggle through some challenge? How long am I willing to work on something before I'm going to quit? Now, I've met students who have negative academic stamina, and I've met some who I'm like, hey, you know what? let's just put that down for now. Like, let's just go take a break. Stand up and stretch your legs, right? I think sometimes it's about our own number system of how we operate in the world. When I say number system, what do I mean by number system? For us, it's very different. There are some people, as a former math teacher, I love math, but then I met some people who really love math, and I realized I don't like math that much. I mean, people who like want to talk about math. What? No. I just want to do a quadratic formula, play with some numbers. I want to do some sine, cosine, and tangent. I was SOHCAHTOA. Like, I don't want to be talking about math theory. That's not the type of math nerd I am. I'm more of a activated math nerd. Like, hey, let me show you this quadratic formula. Let me show you how to factor out these polynomials. Like those are some fun things I enjoy. I don't really. I met somebody on a plane once who really loved math. Like, I thought I loved math until I met this person, and I was like, oh no, I would never ever tell anybody again that I love math, because then they want to talk about math, and I felt bad because I started falling asleep because I was like, I don't even know what the words you're talking about, buddy. I don't even know what these things mean. Now, when we talk about academic stamina, we're talking about, like, what if a student's in a class they don't really like very much, or they don't feel really good at. It's hard to have stamina at something that you feel like you're not good at. So how do you build stamina in a classroom where you're feeling like you're struggling? I have many students get more permission to not like math than they do to not like English. I've had parents tell me during back to school nights, oh, you know what? I was never good at math. They're not going to be good at math. And I'm like, you're saying that out loud? What do I say now as a teacher to not try and chastise this parent, but also to say, well, math is like any skill. It can be learned. Like, we all learn how to walk. You know, you didn't get a kid and struggle on their belly at 5 years old and be like, I don't want to walk, I'm gonna crawl. Like, that's not how we operate it. We let them know that your skills build as your mind grows, your skills build, and there's a process there. And so academic stamina requires us to help students navigate when things are tough. Okay, this is tough for you. Okay, so the idea is you would rather quit, student A, student B. We can't quit. When we were teaching math at San Lorenzo High School, we were using project-based learning. We were using some work from Joe Bowler. We were using the idea of collaborative classrooms. I was a facilitator in the classroom. I was not there to teach everybody all the things. You're going to learn from each other. We sit in groups. We work together, and we work the problems out until completion. And sometimes they're hard problems. When we work with algebra blocks, when we were working with algebra tools, we were trying to give students opportunity to say, okay, doesn't make sense, but let me try and keep working it out. Sometimes students would quit so fast. And so I'm like, no, go back, put the blocks together, put the blocks together in a shape that's a rectangle. Now, if you haven't used algebra tiles or anything like that, these words may not make a lot of sense to you. If you're not a math teacher, they may not make sense to you. But if you know about education, whatever class and subject you teach, I'm talking a lot of math today, maybe because that's the subject that I taught, and I feel I'm an expert at it. You know, I'm using the word lightly, but nonetheless, I think that you can recognize that if you teach a subject and students don't like that subject, it's easier for them to like give up. And our goal is always helping students to know, hey, I'm not really concerned that you love math. I would love it if you love math. But I'm hoping that you will believe in yourself that you can do math. That's the work. And so academic stamina now, I don't have a lot of tips and tools on how to help students build academic stamina. I grew up loving math. I didn't like English class. I knew how to read, but it wasn't about the reading. It was about taking the reading and then putting it into words and then writing sentences and then cleaning up those sentences, all the things that it went into it. So I avoided English class as much as possible, even though I still had to do it. But math class, I'm in there. I'm homework done, helping people with their homework. Like, it was something that brought me to life. And so you will know the students in your class who things that bring them to life and things that don't. So academic stamina is super important. And number three, the last one is bring the community into your curriculum. Bring the community into your curriculum. How do you bring the community into your curriculum? Well, think about the lives of the students. Now, if you teach math the way some people teach math, it's like take the numbers 4 + 5, you add them together, you get 9, and then you move on. Now, when you recognize that most people, they use objects to help students learn counting and numbers because it makes it easier for them and more relevant to them. 5 apples plus 4 apples is how many apples? I think you see lots of commercials and lots of commercials, lots of cartoons and videos where a mom or somebody's trying to teach a kid and they're telling them some basic numbers and the kid is like grasping out of the air for some numbers, you know? Like, and then the parents like, what are you talking about? Like, where are you getting this number from? Because the kid is not making connection between the numbers and the apples and the oranges, and they're just like, let me make up a number, and they make up some numbers and some numbers that are out of the. It's not the multiplication answer, it's not the division answer, it's some wild number, and you're like, where is this kid getting that number? Well, look, when you bring the community in, it helps the numbers become more real. Now, what we know in project-based learning is that how can we take a project that's real life for students and make it something meaningful? Now, listen, back in the day when I was a teacher in a classroom, we had this one project where it was about cell phone plans, right? And cell phone plans back then, you paid a monthly fee plus you paid for a certain number of minutes. Now, in this project, we had students who were young teenagers who were probably thinking about getting phones in the future. And we talked to them about what that looked like. Hey, here's a plan where you pay this much base rate, you pay this much per minute. It was using kind of linear progression and lines, graphing lines. And then there was a plan that was unlimited. Right. So the idea is like, what plan is the best plan? The unlimited plan started off higher than everything else. But when you worked it out, when you looked at the graph, you made a connection. Now, back then, students didn't have cell phones in everybody's pocket. Maybe a couple of them did, but most of them didn't even really understand it because they hadn't been paying for a phone bill yet. Now, today, there's no plans that really have per minutes unless you have a minute plan. But what I've learned in this work with Ever Forward and with the Million Mask Movement and the work that we're doing, our Million Mask Movement project that's called Masks, Emotions, and Math is deeply related to bringing the community into the classroom. And if you see the video, you'll see the video in the show notes. When we did our pilot at Oakland Unity Middle School, you will see these students talk about masks in a way that's deeply reflective. Now, it's not a lot of talking in the video. You're going to just hear some stories that they brought out, some highlights they brought out of what happens in this project. But during this project, for this 8 to 9 weeks that we were working together, those students took one day a week and they began to analyze what did their peers say they were going through? What were they feeling? That's the mask. What were their students and their peers feeling in these anonymous cards? And what these young men began to realize was like, oh man, there's a lot of people going through some real stuff. And I think some of their analysis was so much more powerful than if we tried to have them talk about why they don't talk about what they don't talk about. Our analysis, them being able to look at all these cards, 90 plus 100 students, and you look at all these cards, you're like, wow, so many people are hiding behind these smiles or athleticism or funny or cool or like whatever the things they put on the front of the mask, they're going through real stuff behind the mask. And their reflection showed that. Their ability to analyze and look at the numbers, even before we got to the part where we were taking the number of words on the front and figuring out the percentage for those numbers, making a graph of it or making a chart or using the website to make a word cloud, all the ways they were able to use the math, it was secondary to what they were understanding. And when they got to talk about it, when they said 47% of students at this school said they were happy on the front, but this many of them said they were actually sad. They only show people that the funny part of themselves. They didn't talk about the worry and the stress. They began to make and bring those numbers to life. And if we can help young people bring the curriculum to life, when we can bring the community into the work, I think the learning is so much deeper. So for those three things that you have potentially heard today, 1, taking a mindful minute with your students each day. 2, working on academic stamina, which needs to be trained and taught to students. And 3, bringing the community into your curriculum. I believe that if you begin to engage some of these topics in your classroom, you're going to find a way to deeply engage your students in their learning, in their own learning. And they're not learning for a grade, but learning for the fact that I am getting smarter, wiser, better as a student. I think those things are going to be very beneficial to you and to your community. Listen, as we sign up, I encourage you to go listen to episode 2 with Jerome Hunter. I encourage you to make sure that you are joining our school community, Advocates for Young Men. And if you are an educator who is feeling like I've been looking for something to engage my students, I've been looking for something in our school community to engage them in learning, not just about the subject, but also about themselves, we really highly encourage you to check out the Million Mask Movement and the Masks, Emotions, and Math project. Take care, folks. Thank you for being a part of this podcast. Thank you for being a part of this new season of Unmasking with Male Educators. And I hope you enjoyed this episode with Jerome Hunter, episode 2. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye now.